Hello children, and welcome to another mental math session together today. Today and over the next few days we're going to work really hard to see if we can become more fluent and accurate when we halve some tricky two-digit numbers. Let's start off by looking at some two-digit numbers that we can halve quite fluently already. They're numbers such as 48, 86 and 24. I wonder whether you know why you are all already able to halve those numbers. It's because both digits are even. Here's the number 48 in base 10. If we halve our tens, you know half of 4 tens, that's 2 tens. We now need to halve our ones. Half of 8 is 4. So half of 48 is 24. But the following numbers I'm going to show you, they're more tricky to halve at the moment because the tens is an odd number. For example, 76, 92 and 54. And I'm going to show you how you can halve those numbers in a minute. But first of all, we're going to see if we can learn what half of 30, 50, 70 and 90 is. So 30 is more difficult to halve because we've got an odd number of tens, and at the moment we haven't learned what half of 3 is. However, a way of helping us to learn what half of 30 is to partition 30 into 20 and 10. We've still got 30 all together, but I've just partitioned it. So let's halve the 20. Half of 20 is 10. And then we've got 10 left to halve. You know what half of 10 is. It's 5. So half of 30 is 10 and the 5, which is 15. Half of 30 is 15. Sometimes using real life maths will help you to learn some of these facts. In half an hour, there is 30 minutes. In a half of half an hour, that's a quarter, it's 15 minutes. And some of you might know that from your understanding of time. In a quarter of an hour, there are 15 minutes, and that's half of 30 minutes. So remember, half of 30 is 15. And we're going to try and remember that fact over the next few days. Let's move on to finding half of 50. Again, it's tricky at the moment because there's an odd number of tens. But let's do the same as we did for half of 30. Let's partition it into 10 and a bit, because you know what half of 10 is. So this time we've got 40 and 10. It's still 50. Half of 40 is 20, and you know what half of 10 is. So half of 50 is 25. Half of 50 is 25. Let's try half of 70. As before, we'll partition it into a 10 and a bit the rest. So this time we've got 60 and 10 to halve. Half of 60 is 30, and then we'll be left with half of 10, which is 5. So half of 70 is 35. And the last number is 90. Here's 90. Let's partition it. So we've got 10 and the rest, which is 80. Half of 80, you know that, that's 40. And then we've got half of that 10, meaning half of 90 is 45. Another way you can use real life to help you learn what half of 90 is, if you're a football fan, a football match lasts 90 minutes and it's played in 2 halves, and each half lasts for 45 minutes. That's another way you might be able to remember what half of 90 is. So now you've seen how to halve those tricky numbers, your job now is to try and remember them. So let's go through them together. Half of 30 is 15. Half of 30 minutes is 15 minutes, a quarter of an hour. Half of 50 is 25. Double 25 is 50. Half of 70 is 35. And the last one, half of 90 is 45. Now let's see if we can remember what these halves are. Let's start with 50. Can you remember what half of 50 is? We partitioned it into 40 and 10. Half of 40 and half of 10. We got it? Half of 50 is 25. Oh, let's try that football match. There are 90 minutes in a football match and it's played in 2 halves. We partition 90 into 80 and 10. How many minutes are there in half of a football match? It's 45. Half of 70. 60 and 10. What's half of 60 and half of 10? Have you got it? It's 35. And finally, half of 30. That's half of half an hour, which is a quarter of an hour. How many minutes in a quarter of an hour? It's 15. Going to go a little bit faster now. I'm going to point to a number, call a number out, and let's see if you can call out its half. Half of 70. 35. Half of 50. 25. Half of 30. How many minutes in a quarter of an hour? That's right, it's 15. Half of 70. 35. Half of 90. 45. And last one, half of 50. 25. Keep practicing these at home so that you're able to memorise these halves to help you to become more fluent when we halve tricky 2-digit numbers. So when you've mastered halving those 4 numbers, you'll then be able to halve numbers like this. If you need to do jottings, that's okay, and then you'll soon be able to do them mentally. Watch now how I use jottings to halve 54. So I'm going to partition it into 50 and 4, and we've just learned that half of 50 is 25. Half of 4 is 2. We add them together and half of 54 is now 27. Let's try halving 92. Can you remember what half of 90 is? It's half of that football match. Half of 90 is 45. Half of 2 is 1. Add them together and our half is 46. And the last one is half of 76. We've learned that half of 70 is 35. half of 6 is 3, add them together and the total is 38. The final step will be for you to do this mentally without any jottings. But remember, it's okay to use jottings until you're ready to be able to do it mentally. So to do this mentally, we almost do the jottings in our head. Half of 50, we've learnt that's 25, so remember 25. Half of 4 is 2, 25 and 2 is 27. Half of 76. Half of 70, it's 35, keep that there. Half of 6 is 3, so 35 and 3 is 38. And the last one, half of 92. Half of 90 is 45. Half of 2 is 1. 45 and 1 is 46. Well done everybody. Go now and try and practice and memorising half of 30, 50, 70 and 90. Then try with some jottings and then hopefully you'll be able to move on to doing some of these mentally. Bye bye children.